Good morning. This is the FBBC here with your daily American Civil War news update. As you may already know, current President Abraham Lincoln won the election of 1860, leading to the secession of 7 states in the Deep South from separating from the Union and led to an outbreak of war.
As two individual nations, both France and Britain have chosen to remain neutral and not join either the Union or Confederacy in this fight. Despite several attempts by the South to gain our support, as well as the misconduct on the Union's part in the Trent Affair, which nearly brought Britain into war, what are the war strategies of the North and South, Colin?
Well, the North plans to destroy the South's economy with blockades, close off the Mississippi River and trade routes to the West, and capture Richmond, the capital of the South. The South simply wants to protect their lands and knock the Union hard until they feel obliged to surrender. What are the motives of these provinces to fight?
The South has seceded and is fighting for their right to own slaves.
Right to own slaves? What kind of constitution doesn't abolish slavery? Sure, we have a slave or two back in the day, but now we've learned our lesson and we've been slave-free for decades.
It just shows how our culture has come a long way compared to those silly Americans. How could we support a nation that still allows slavery? The North is attempting to preserve the Union. It seems like they could be a lost cause. Now, let's head over to Lexi Rios, who has the inside, in-depth scoop on our economic relationships with the North and South.
At the beginning of 1862, we had a very strong trading system with America. We got many items from the North, but the South supplied one very important product, cotton. As the Civil War went on, the Union started to blockade the South's ports. They cut off our necessary trade with the South. This was declining our productivity, and our economy needed a way around the Union's tactics. While we did not find a way to stop the blockade, we managed to find a new trade network. India and Egypt have been growing with their cotton industry, and we set up a trading system with them. Egypt has overly high prices on cotton and has made us take out substantial loans. Since Egypt seemed to drain us money instead of helping our economy, we switched more over to India. Throughout this war, India was 90% of our imports on cotton. They are our main supplier of cotton since the Confederacy was blocked.
Thank you, Lexi, and now a quick message from a sponsor.
Hello there, I'm French biologist Louis Pasteur. Have you ever had a glass of milk and felt terribly ill? This is because of the small organisms living in said milk. On April 20th, I conducted a scientific test where I killed microorganisms, purifying the solutions. I believe I'm going to call the process pasteurization. It is rather simple. You just heat the substances to the right temperature to kill the microorganisms. With pasteurization, you can ensure you or a loved one that won't die from dirty milk. Save a life, spread the word. Thank you.
Welcome back. This just in, General Lee of the Confederacy has temporarily changed tactics. Starting on June 25th, 1862, Lee launched a week's worth of attacks on the North rather than playing defense. This man is a clever general who I believe could help the South win. Now it's time for some politics. Today we have political analyst Sam. So tell us, how is the Civil War affecting the French Second Empire?
Well, on July 16, 1862, Napoleon III met John Slidell in Vichy. John Slidell is one of the Confederate diplomats who are sent to France to arrange for loans and assistance for the Confederate cause. They will discuss the current matter at hand on whether or not France will endorse the South. So far, Napoleon III announced he will only show interest in endorsing the South if the British show interest as well. The French are only comfortable with fighting the Union if they fight with the British as well. In the end, the British decided they will remain neutral due to their need to defend their land in Canada and their interest in the Caribbean and Latin America. Although not everyone wanted to remain neutral, in the fall, British Chancellor William E. Gladstone and British Foreign Secretary Lord John Russell expressed the need that civil Europe must stop the war.
How did the South react to the French and British not joining in on the war?
Confederate leaders such as Jefferson Davis were disappointed, but they were still hopeful. They still believed that France and England would change their minds after cotton shortages in Europe.
Thank you, Sam. But unfortunately, that is all the time we have with you for now. The Americans are at it again. In 1861, the Union and Confederacy fought a battle at Bull Run, but supposedly one wasn't enough?
That's right, Vivian. The Americans fought a second battle of Bull Run on August 30th, 1862. It's quite an embarrassment for the Union. Confederate leaders, most notably General Robert Lee, proved superior to any officers from the North.
It looks as if the South's generalship could pull them into victory. Perhaps they're the army we should support.
This just in, we have live coverage of the President of Prussia, Otto von Bismarck, who's attempting to persuade the Prussian House of Representatives to increase military spending and unifying Germany. On this story, we have Nolan Kremai.
Okay, it is September of 1862, and Otto von Bismarck is finishing his speech to the Prussian House of Representatives right now.
The position of Prussia in Germany will not be determined by liberalism, but by its power. Prussia must concentrate its strength and hope for the favorable moment, which has already come and gone several times. Since the treaties of Vienna, our frontiers have been ill-designed for a healthy body politic. Not through speeches and majority decisions will the great questions of the day be decided. That was the great mistake of 1848 and 1849. But by iron and blood. Woo!
It appears Bismarck's powerful words have convinced the Prussian representatives. Bismarck's plan to unify the German territories through war will continue. However, this could cause huge conflict with all of Europe, for if Bismarck goes power-hungry, we could have another Napoleon on our hands.
It's your fault, by the way.
We need to keep the balance of powers equal throughout Europe, rather than involving ourselves in American conflicts. It is our duty as European nations to be prepared to maintain the balance of power between us.
And don't forget, there's also unification occurring in the Apennine Peninsula. Italy has been trying to unify since 1815, and they've come a long way. The great leader Napoleon III has aided this unification to prevent Austrian influence. We don't need any of that. Let's get that out of that region.
Hopefully those Italians will adopt some of our rich French culture.
The Italian general Giuseppe Garibaldi plans to conquer the city of Rome, and the provinces are adopting a common monetary system. Seems like the Italy unification is almost complete.
Exactly. The new nation could be a great trade partner for both Britain and France. Their location on the Mediterranean is quite superb.
We will now go back to French politics right after this commercial break. Here's a reminder of our French culture.
Get your copy of Victor Hugo's famous novel, Les Miserables. The novel is one of the greatest novels of the 19th century. The novel focuses on our history on the eve of the Battle of Waterloo on the July Revolution of 1830. There's even romance. Buy your copy for just $12.50. This novel shows French culture, something those Americans do not have. They're too busy fighting their Civil War. Their literature and arts are falling behind. European culture is far superior to that of the Americans.
And we are back to French politics. Colin, is there an update on Slidell?
Word has it that Napoleon III met with Slidell a second time on October 28th. We have two speakers here with us now. Sam, is that true?
Yes, that is true. The South is practically begging Napoleon III for his endorsement once again. Why would we want to get involved in the American War? After hearing what happened September 17th, the Americans are taking the war too far. The battle at Antietam was supposedly the bloodiest event in the American continent. Additionally, Napoleon III does not want to upset the North. The North offers far more products for trade than the South. Who needs cotton when you can have tea, sugar, lumber, and industrial goods? Instead, Napoleon III will focus his interest in imperial expansion into Central America. His main focus will be his Mexican campaign on cotton-rich lands in the Gulf of Mexico. Finding a replacement for the South's cotton supply will not be a problem.
Interesting. And Everett, could you elaborate more on France's involvement in Mexico as well as their intentions?
Certainly. After a debt payment dispute in 1861 between Mexico and the European nations they couldn't pay back, French, Britain, Spain, the French stayed in Mexico after the dispute was handled and seized Veracruz to set up a monarchy in the region. On May 5, 1862, Mexican General Ignacio Zaragoza defended the city of Puebla de Los Angeles. Against all odds, the untrained Mexican army defeated the superior forces of the French. This battle is known as the Battle of Puebla. Although this battle does not end the French involvement, it is symbolic for Mexico to keep fighting the French. One of the main reasons of Confederate sympathizing was the access to Mexico that the Confederate States of America could give to France. This recent development, however, might prove to be an end in European involvement in Mexico.
Thank you, Everett. We will be back with our last guest for today, right after our last commercial break.
Long live Queen Victoria and the Victorian era. Ladies, come by the latest fashion trends. These trends include a Bertha neckline featuring a low shoulder. The next trend includes a cage crinoline, including small top and large bottom. Other trends include bodices ending at the natural waistline and wide pagoda sleeves.
And welcome back. We have our last guest, Shawnee T, who will give us a rundown on technological advancements that have been made. Shawnee T?
In 1862, there were multiple technological advancements that impacted the war. One of these advancements was the Gatling gun, which was invented by Richard J. Gatlin. The Gatling gun was first used at the Battle of Petersburg. It was one of the first hand-driven machine guns and could fire 400 rounds a minute. In other words, it was very deadly. It was sold primarily to the Union Army. Another technological advancement was the Manet bullet, which was improved by French Army officer Claude Manet to fit a rifle musket. It was a cylindrical bullet that was lethal from up to 500 yards due to the fact that it was being shot from the Springfield rifle musket. It was much more accurate than any rifle used in the war before, and it was used extensively by both the Union and Confederate armies. These advancements in weaponry have caused devastating amounts of casualties for both the Union and Confederacy. Additionally, recent inventions like the telegraph have boosted communications. This allows armies to officially coordinate attacks This also allows news to spread across nations quicker. Improvements in communications have tied nations closer together.
I have a gut feeling that the South are going to win the war against the North. The leadership is far superior. Don't you agree, Vivian?
I'm not so sure, Colin. Word has it that Union General Ulysses S. Grant is kicking Confederate butt in the West. If Lincoln were to send Grant to the East, General Lee would have quite the challenge.
Well, I don't know about you, Vivian, but it doesn't seem like a good idea to involve with the Confederacy in America. This war is too unpredictable. Also, Britain has to save its resources in case people like Bismarck decide to ascend Europe into chaos, although with the Lancashire cotton crisis, many citizens are thinking alliance with the Confederacy will get us out of our cotton slump. However, is the risk greater than the reward? We still hold good trade deals with the Union of America's North. Any thoughts, Vivian?
I couldn't agree more. Although there would be some economic gains that we could reap from the South, joining them would be completely against our morals. I mean, we did outlaw slavery many decades ago. How hypocritical would it be if we just fought for the Confederacy?
Quite hypocritical indeed, and ultimately not worth it. Well, that's it for today's broadcast. I'm Colin Bliss.
And I'm Vivian Case.
And that concludes today's broadcast of FBBC. Tune in next time to find out more.